WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us today. We Should Know is on there. We're coming to you from Star Communications Channel 16, WCLN Radio. There's a summation in the Sampson Weekly newspaper each and every week, Tuesdays at 2:30. You pick us up on any one of those venues. It's uploaded to YouTube about 2 weeks later after the show airs. If you want to pick it up from there, you can literally call somebody in another state, another part of the world, and pick it up on YouTube if there's some things you want to pick up on, or maybe some of our guests mention something, or you just want to see what some of our guests look like. Go to YouTube, you can pick it up. I want to kind of introduce our guests, not that there's a great amount of introduction for Eileen Coite, who's the Director of Cooperative Extension right here in Sampson County. Been over in Wayne County, then we've ended up with you, and you're not going anywhere, so we got you covered. So you brought the new guy, Hunter Rhodes. Hunter, you're the new Cooperative Extension Field Agent. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, sir.
So, Hunter, you come to us from Johnston County.
That's right.
The southern part, and near the Harper House up there. I say the Harper House, and everybody's always familiar with where that's at. It's huge historical value. So I want to thank both of you for being here. Let's talk about ag stuff. Open with this idea here comes from Business NC. In fact, it was an article that was printed in 2019, just this past March. And it touts that the USDA reported in North Carolina exports worth 4.1 B with a billion in 2014, an increase of more than 200% since 2005 from North Carolina. And agriculture supported nearly 1.3 million jobs. Those numbers, I mean, I'm just not, anything over about 10, I'm in trouble with. That's a lot of numbers. Does that sound reasonable?
Yes,
it does. Significant, but for here in North Carolina, definitely. Well, particularly in eastern North Carolina.
And I think what it speaks to is the volume not only of cash flow, but the volume of export as well when we look at exports. Hunter, a couple of crops that come to mind immediately that clearly is in research, but clearly that I'm familiar with because I remember as a young person being involved in that, and that's sweet potatoes and tobacco. However, I thought tobacco was kind of phasing out. That's not necessarily true, is it?
Well, not necessarily. There's definitely been some cuts. Farmers have experienced some contract cuts. There's not as much in the area as there has been, but it's still viable.
Tobacco's always been a huge leaf crop for North Carolina and an export crop, but the way we do business with the tobacco has radically changed. Has that allowed farmers to mechanize more and cut back on the extensive labor?
Yes, sir. There's a lot more mechanization within the field, not just in tobacco, but all other crops. There's still a certain degree of hand labor that has to be done with the crop, but mechanization has allowed them to grow more acreage.
We've covered a number of subjects with in here with folks from, Eileen, as you know, from NC State and others that have specialty backgrounds in various aspects. One of those things that comes to mind for me, and we hadn't talked about this in a while, is drone technology and its application to agriculture. Can either one of you kind of speak to us on that and update us on what some of the more predominant and uses for drone technologies, is unmanned flying machines, I should say?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about drones. I know we've got some training coming up, but I would just say, now for scouting type purposes, just for being able to recognize deficiencies out there in the field. Hunter can probably do better at this than
some drones have an adaptive lens that come with them that allows them to pick up deficiencies of nutrients in the soil. So instead of applicating a universal band of fertilizer through the field, they can apply different rates through the field and be more efficient.
So do we have the computer technology now on the equipment to be able to change that application based on grid analysis, or what?
Yes, sir. The technology's there. It'll take a while for farms to implement it, but it's definitely there, and it's continuously growing too.
So the big factors, and I'll kind of pose this question in this way: the biggest challenge you see for a family out there, quote, if there is such a thing left as a family farm, but for the family farm or even the corporate farm, what's one of the biggest challenges you see that they have? So
there's still a lot of family farms left. Their acres may have grown, but they're still largely run by families. I think the biggest challenge going forward is going to be adapting to new crops and new areas in agriculture. Sampson County is a very diverse county, and I feel confident there's enough of crops being grown that they can find something that fits what they need.
Have you been able to make your way around to all the points and far yonders here in Sampson and that kind of thing?
Not all of them. I've been around to several of them, but I'm still working on that. I haven't been throughout the entire county just yet.
Eileen, how important is our tie to NC State through Cooperative Extension to make sure our folks is getting the most current research and information? How important is it?
It is our tie, basically. So NC State and NC A&T State, you know, they're why we're here. You know, we have those universities there for both education, research, and then extension. And so we are the arm of the university out in the counties for our farmers, for our citizens, in any way. We're the extension of the university. So without them, we wouldn't be here.
For crop application, what's the thing you get called on more for as a extension agent in field crops? What's the kinds of things that you folks call and say, hey, I need you to come out here and take a look at this?
Most of the time it's just any kind of general problems with their crops. They'll call me when they see something physically wrong with the crop. They'll call me, and if they're not sure what it is, they haven't seen it before, they'll call me and I'll come take a look at it, and if I can't figure it out, I can usually have a contact that can. So,
do we have any diseases now that we're concerned about? I remember years ago with sweet potatoes, I can't remember the name of it, some of these things were like weird. You'd have to, I remember having as a little boy I would be at the end of the row, and my father would have me cutting off the ends of the roots of sweet potato plants. And I had a neighbor that would come by, and he would always go over and whisper in my ear. He would say, you know your daddy's just doing that to give you something to do, don't you? But it had something to do with a disease.
So with sweet potatoes, the big thing is after they're harvested from the field, or some in the field, is internal necrosis, where the potato essentially rots in the curing facilities. That's definitely been something the university's looked at, and they're doing studies for to see if they can change anything in the curing process to stop that from happening.
It seemed like I've seen a lot more this year. There was just an observation. All of mine is just observation. I got no facts to back this up, but just observation-wise, I've seen an uptick in the fields of cotton out. Is that something due to funding or the demand for cotton, or is price of cotton gone up, or what?
I am not sure about that. That is up to the farmer, I guess, and I haven't really.
But somebody's tracking that somewhere.
Right. Yes, sir.
Let's talk about this question, and I'll keep peeling them out directly. We'll get on a thread here that y'all want to talk about. But some of the things that interest me, and I've had a number of folks, even the growers and manufacturers, come in and talk about this, not just Cooperative Extension or scientific part, but the whole hemp world. People growing hemp, people saying get somebody else in to talk about hemp. Where are we in Sampson County as it relates to hemp? Do we have any hemp being grown?
So yes, sir, we do have some hemp being grown. It's definitely a growing industry throughout the state, Sampson County included. Growers have to apply for a permit license to be able to grow it. It's not everyone can't grow it, and once they get that permit, though, it's pretty much a pilot program where the universities, along with NCDA and the farmers, are working together to research the crop and see how viable it will be for our economy.
Do y'all get called on a lot for people say, I've got some acres I'm thinking about putting in hemp? and they're looking where they can buy the seedlings or the pods or what have you. Do you get those kinds of calls, or is folks just kind of networking this on their own?
I personally have not, but I know that there are resources online as well as through other streams that they can get the information needed to connect with one another and get plants and whatever are needed in the industry.
It seems that the drawback with hemp is partly education and trying to inform the public between what is marijuana and what has the THC versus the plant as it relates to fiber and paper and that kind of thing. How do we get beyond that, where we can actually look at another product or commodity that can be grown, exported, and used in the United States to fill some of those voids? Where does the challenges lie?
As far as with the marijuana versus hemp, just getting the education out there to people that help them understand that hemp does not contain THC, and that although it looks very similar to marijuana, it's not the same.
The cannibal oils, yeah. Anyway, the oil that comes from the has always been, when I have a conversation with anybody about that always hits the table to start with. Well, that's something that's, really an unknown medication that we need more of. Is that something that can be done through local manufacturing, or does that have to be shipped off? So
we're really lacking with processors for that right now. But yes, CBD is very important right now. There needs to be more research done through the pharmaceutical community before we know how viable the CBD will be in the future.
These things that we talk about when we just kind of brush the surface here in this first segment, I want to come back and kind of maybe dig into some of these other areas and some of the things that's being tested here. We had a conversation a few months ago about stevia and what was happening with that. So we're going to take our first break and we'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. We're talking about agriculture in Sampson and surrounding counties. Our friends down in Bladen, Duplin, in fact, 7 or 8 different counties that surround us here. Stay tuned, call a friend. We'll be back in a moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I want to thank you for being with us today. We're talking about a subject that I think I'm familiar with, but then I discover I'm not. It's the subject of agriculture and all that entails. Everything from growing hogs to chickens to tobacco, which is completely produced and harvested in a different way than I can recall. It also involves exports, but clearly it involves 85+ billion industry for North Carolina. Two people that knows that well is Eileen Coite, Director of Cooperative Extension here in Sampson County, and Hunter Rhodes, the new guy on the block. He's a field crop agent. That's not like a SBI agent, but anything to do with field crops, if they get out of hand, you know it.
Yes, sir.
So we've talked about some things in the first segment. I want to kind of, in some ways, broaden that a little bit, and in some ways narrow it down a little bit. Some of these specialty crops that we see, stevia comes to mind as being a big deal. 2 or 3 years ago, we had some folks come in and talk about that a bit. Is that something that's taking off? Are people planting that crop in fields now, or is it still kind of in the test mode?
I have not had any calls about stevia. That's not to say it's not here. I know that there are some research plots here and there scattered out, but as far as growers actually farming it, I have not been contacted about it.
And for folks that probably listening that don't remember, that's a sugar kind of substitute crop. You can actually use that for various things. I think one of them is a sugar additive, but there's some other things I think you can apply for with that. Is there any emerging crops? I've got a whole list of crops I want to talk about, but any emerging crops that's not part of what we consider the norm that you've seen since you've been here, Hunter?
The biggest one, as we've mentioned before, is hemp. That's the talk of the town, so to speak, right now.
It really is. Eileen, one of the things I'm hearing as well is that there's a certain amount of caution. When I had Tom in, Dr. Melton, he was talking about that he would recommend folks step into that field literally with a sense of caution and minimal amount of investment to start with. And is that because it's so turbulent, or that we really don't know if there's a market for it?
Well, currently it's still a research program. It's through a pilot program, so everything that is grown now is included in research for research purposes. So anything could happen and we lose the market. So it'd be best not to be too heavily invested in case something does happen.
Eileen, I know we do a lot, and I've, of course, met some of the folks on the advisory committee for ag, some great people, a lot of dedicated folks. How do we continue and expand the education of folks that live in the agriculture area but still have limited knowledge about what ag is?
I think we need to get out there whenever there's opportunities like this fall when we have the street fair downtown. Back in the spring, Roseboro had Bloomfest. Those are the type places where the community comes out, and so I think we need to have a presence there, and we need to let them know, give them some facts about agriculture, maybe a magnet to put on your refrigerator, or maybe just a fact sheet to take home. Maybe we need to have some kind of an interactive segment to it. At last year's street fair, we had the Port Council has these new goggles that you can put on. You sit in the chair and you just kind of look to your left, look to your right, and you're actually like on a farm. And you can see what's going on inside the hog house. You can see what's going on the outside. You can look from the view of the feed bin. You can see a feed truck, delivering feed to that farm. And because there's a lot of questions out there of, there's those buildings where the hogs live, what kind of environment is that? And so that actually takes you inside, and you can see that, they have a nice, cooler, comfortable environment than being outside in the heat all day.
We've had a number in the past year. We've had two big issues, particularly with the swine industry, and one of those involved legal lawsuits, civil suits, which has been tremendously damaging. The other is Mother Nature.
Yes.
Let's talk about both of those for a moment, and to see what, if anything, has happened that may be pluses. There's not so much you can do about Mother Nature, but in the civil suits, is that something that seems to have subsided a bit, or is there still a lot of fear out there?
I think for the industry and for our farmers, there is still a lot of fear. A lot of them are thinking, well, if we've started with hogs, where's it going to end? What's the next complaint going to be? I think that some of the folks on the other side, maybe they didn't really realize what they were getting into. There's just been some serious tension in our communities because of that. And so again, you asked me a few minutes ago about education. We've just got to go back and educate folks on what actually is happening, and all of the regulations that the farmers have to follow in order to apply. Yes, there's animal waste that's getting pumped out onto a field, but it's been treated in that lagoon, and that's a perfect waste treatment system that there is, and it's put out at agronomic rates. They're not going to be applying more than what the crops, the grass can take up on the field and utilize. So everything about it is a system, an organic system that is working. So we've just got to do a better job of communicating that to the public and letting them know that, our farms are safe. You know, our farmers have children and grandchildren growing up right there just like anyone else does, and they're, you know, and there's expense to over applying when it comes to things like pesticides. You know, they don't want to go out there and put more out than what's needed, and they, you know, they don't want it to drift on other people's property. So there's, you know, there's a lot of education going on, and a lot of regulations to keep everything in check where it needs to be, keep it safe.
You know, Hunter, sometimes I look at this big picture with ag, and as we're talking about this subject, particularly as it relates to waste application and these kinds of things, and I agree with Eileen, a lot of it is education, folks just basically understanding. And the other part of it is that I go to the grocery store and I see something on the shelf, especially in the produce area, and it says 100% organic. And it's either 30, 40% more than this item over here that's not. I go to the meat section and I see something that says completely grown organic, you know, feed and everything. And it's
antibiotic free.
Yeah, and it's always more. And I kind of scratch my head, you know, kind of growing up in this area. Does that confuse people? I mean, is there a reason? Because when I, you know, think about hog waste and that kind of thing, I mean, there's nothing more organic than that. That's right. So if you can't, so I guess my observation here, I'm growing, I don't know, cucumbers or pepper, and I can get more money for cucumbers or pepper if I grow organic. Well, I might call the hog farmer and say, look, I need about 20 tons over here because I kind of, does that even make sense? I'm just trying to figure this out.
I would say the majority of those terms, excuse me, are more or less marketing terms for the retail side of things. I really won't go too in depth on that, but I feel that that's the majority, the main purpose of those terms.
But these things, I think, you know, we got to talk about, guys,
Right.
because on the other side of the table is people that, you know,
They don't know.
They don't know, and so
Right.
they even might go to restaurants and sit down and go, now, I want this grilled chicken, but I want to make sure it's, how do they put it, not cage chicken. It's
Cage
chicken,
free.
what do you call free range chicken or whatever. And granted, I don't know. I guess probably if you have a free range chicken versus one that was grain fed, there's probably going to be a little bit different in the taste simply because of the food commodities, I would assume. But those are real, in the real world out there where people don't know the difference or don't understand how things are grown, those questions are important.
They are important, but you know, some time back there was a restaurant, and I'm not going to name any restaurants here, that was really promoting that they're serving antibiotic-free meat in their sandwiches.
Yeah, and what does that mean?
And you know, and I'm like, well, all meat is antibiotic-free.
Yeah.
I mean, our farmers, we have what's called withdrawal times. And so, you know, if there is a sick animal, we want to treat that animal. That is the humane thing to do, you know, and we have animal welfare in place to do that. So, but if we do treat that animal, then we're not going to sell that animal for however many days for that particular antibiotic that was used to treat the animal. And so, again, you know, those drugs, that withdrawal time is going to keep from there being antibiotics in that meat. So really, all of our meat should be antibiotic free.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to the whole idea of something is grown with organic fertilizer or non-organic fertilizer, and does folks understand what organic fertilizer is?
I think there is a large disconnect there between the general community and the agriculture community. Conventional fertilizer is the only difference between organic and conventional fertilizers are that the components in organic fertilizer are just extracted from natural occurring things, whereas...
Let's pick up on that when we come back. Hold that thought. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be back in a moment. We're talking about organic and non-organic fertilizers. Call a friend, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know is on there. If you're just tuning in on the radio and picking us up, we're talking with Eileen Coite, Director of Cooperative Extension. Also, we're talking with Hunter Rhodes, the new guy with Cooperative Extension here in Sampson County. Comes to us from Johnson County with field crops. These are the people, if you have questions or you need to connect with something or specifics, you can call 592-7161. 592-7161. There's specialty people there to help you with most anything that you might want to grow, that you might want to fertilize, eat, do anything with as it relates to ag. They can either find out or know or direct you to or get you the information. And we encourage you to stay informed and understand what's going on. As we went to break, Hunter, you were talking about this whole component of organic versus non-organic. We kind of got on that, and I had to kind of cut you off in the middle there. Let's pick that back up.
So basically my point I was getting to is that conventional fertilizer and organic fertilizer, there really isn't much difference other than one component in the fertilizer, phosphorus. And conventional bag pelletized fertilizer is often man-made because it can be rare to find in natural elements. Mm-hmm. Whereas organic fertilizer can either be, as we discussed before, animal waste that we use, or organic fertilizers that are made without the phosphorus in them. So,
when you look at the crops grown here, one of the crops right now that's going on is kind of one of my personal favorites is blueberries, and blueberries seem to be just observation again. Not any scientific fact, but you guys can fill in that. It just seems to be I'm seeing more and more blueberry farms. Maybe I'm going to places that's got more blueberry farms in Bladen and the southern part of Sampson and Pender. And I hesitate to start mentioning counties because somebody will call or write in and go, why didn't you mention Cumberland, or why didn't you mention some other county, Duplin? But here's the thing. Are we seeing more food? And I look at it from the sense ready-to-eat foods like blueberries, blackberries, cucumbers, squash. Are we seeing more of that hitting the market now? Is that just something that's spotty throughout the area? I mean, it don't register high on the mark as sweet potatoes or tobacco, but yet still seems to be more of it out there.
I can't speak on the amount that is being grown, but I can say that I know that all of what you mentioned are very high value market crops, and anything that'll provide help for a farmer, anything he can make a good living at.
Probably the offshoot to that question would be, there's still a lot of fruits and vegetables that we have to import because of the latitude that we're in. We just simply can't grow. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
And those would be like what? Bananas? Mm-hmm. I don't think we can grow bananas.
No.
Pineapple? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Maybe in a greenhouse setting.
Yeah, well, maybe a greenhouse.
Not in natural field setting.
Yeah. And those are the kinds of things, though, when you think about the market, people are looking to break free and do something unique and kind of get in on the front part of that, and that's back to hemp. That's what's happening from what I've been told from folks that have come here to allow me to ask them some questions, is that they don't want to be left behind. They're hearing all this up to anywhere from $8,000-$10,000 an acre that they can make off of growing hemp. So they're going, you sign me up. But again, there's this hesitancy. How do we open that door? Is the stopping point with that the FDA, Food and Drug Administration? Is it the DEA, the drug people? Is it the legislature, General Assembly? How do you get the door open enough to allow farmers to really get out there and see if there is a market?
So it still is definitely a very cloudy subject since it's been illegal for so long, and it just has recently became legal. there's not a lot of research that has gone into it. So this pilot program that they're doing now is to build the research up so that eventually we can make it a sustainable value to our economy.
Would it benefit us to look at other states that's already been involved in this for maybe 8 years or 5 years, how long they've been involved in it? Would it benefit us to like send envoys, and it might already have happened, but send envoys out there to look at it and say, okay, how are you guys doing this? What are some of the problematic issues? And then come back and not only inform the citizens, but inform our legislature, which, you know, those are the folks I'm sure have got committee people to do a lot of this. Is that something that's being done or not being done?
So I'm sure that a lot of the researchers are visiting these other places and getting information from them. Now, granted, every state's going to be different. We're all going to face different issues in different regions of the country. As far as from a legal standpoint, I would say that's a great idea to get the information we need for legalization. So look at where it's been a little bit longer and use their methods.
I want to switch back to another subject that we've talked about a bit, but kind of get back into it because we're right on the cusp of being in the middle of that season again, and that's something called hurricane season. And down here, and when I say down here in Sampson County, and then down there in places like Ivanhoe and other areas where it's the water table is like, I mean, it's the rivers it's not good. So we've seen that happen, Eileen, and you've been directly involved with dealing with livestock, poultry, everything from getting feed to horses to you name it. What are some of the positive things that has been done during a hurricane situation that just floods everything? What are some of the positive things? And then let's talk about some of the challenges going forward, something that we still need to fix.
Well, we have partnered, Extension has partnered with the Department of Agriculture to, I'm backing up to Hurricane Florence,
sure.
of course, our most recent one, and we opened up several animal supply points in the southeast. So we had here in our county, Lenoir County, Bladen County, even down in Onslow and Pender, we had some locations where people could come in and they could get some hay to get them through, some feed. There were some animal health products. There were many, many things donated. We had some very generous farmers from the western part of the state, even in South Carolina, that hauled hay in so that we could have those resources for people who their resources were flooded, or maybe they couldn't even get to the hay, and so we could replenish them with those supplies and get those animals fed for a short period of time. So we've now got a much better network of where those resources are, and we're more equipped to be able to be more organized, to improve the communication for whenever that happens again, because we know there's going to be another one. I mean, there's just no question about that. So
the crops like hay and other kinds of things that horses, cattle, those kinds of things need, is there enough supply in this area with field crops to be able to fill that? Do you have to go to other parts of the state to get it? Either one.
Well, if we get hit again, particularly this year with a storm like we did last year, we're going to be in a much bigger mess. Not only did we have such a supply that was depleted because of the flooding in the fall, but the spring has been so dry that we haven't even been able to harvest, enough hay to get us probably through this season without a hurricane. We're going to come up short on hay this year. I feel sure of that.
And there are those that would say that to anticipate a similar kind of situation because of the trends that the weather system, as they look at it, that we're going and moving into a hotter climate. We're moving into more water. So what do you do to prepare for that continued kind of floodplain situation? Is there something that the state's looking at? Is the folks with the extensions throughout all of our counties coming together? Is there anything happening on that? Because again, I'm saying we're sitting now in July and we're already in hurricane season. So August, September, peaks September, and then boom, it's tragic time. Is there something? Is there kind of ready alert status at some point in time? And is there out of state capacities? Maybe I should say, do we need to do that?
yeah. I mean, you can never do too much.
Right.
I think DOT has done a tremendous job of trying to go in and clean out, ditches and clean up areas where we had debris and where water wasn't moving through. Even some of our waterways, we've had some of our volunteer organizations like, Friends of the Sampson County Waterways. They've done a lot of efforts of trying to clean up those waterways where you don't have so much debris in them, where the water can flow and can move. We have our beaver management program where we can help with breaking up those beaver dams. But the more that we can keep those areas opened up and keep that water flowing, then we won't have.
And part of it, I think, is for us collectively to remind each other that these things do happen, and not to just let it be the 24-hour news cycle and all of a sudden it's over with and it's not going to happen. And then when it happens again, we're right back in the same situation. And one of the things you mentioned was the ditches beside the roads and those kinds of things. Those I hear more from farmers. When does the state ever do that anymore? Does DOT, since they own the property, do they clean out those ditches? And what I'm hearing is they don't have the equipment to do that anymore. So that's to me is a devastating issue that I guess at some point in time somebody's going to have to face. And with that said, and as we go to break, when we come back, I want to kind of transition from that and get into exports a little bit, what's happening around the world and the importance of exports from field crops right here in North Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking about all things ag. If you eat it for some reason, or drive it, or you build a house with it, it's ag-related. We'll be back in a moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're coming up on the last segment here at We Should Know. We're talking about agriculture with Eileen Coite, Director of Cooperative Extension in Sampson County, and also Hunter Rhodes from Johnson County, now in Sampson County, is a field crop agent here in the county. I'll start this last segment again with a quote from Business NC. It says, China is the largest trade partner for forest products, which in 2017 accounted for a total international export value of $1.6 billion and ranked in the top 5 commodities for North Carolina, according to the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. When we look at that, and I use this quote specifically because oftentimes folks don't see forestry and wood products as being a big export thing. But that's a huge piece of ag and what ag does, because that's something that although neither one of you may be the specialty people that goes out and does that, but it deserves us laying that on the table as part of the commodity. Wouldn't you agree?
I definitely would. Forestry is very big in the southeastern portion of our area, and it's on acres just like any other crop is. While it might take a little longer to grow, it's still a means of financial for growers or landowners. So it's definitely a large piece of our agricultural economy.
When we look at and talk about exports, obviously there's other exports, and we've talked about China and we've talked about other countries that some of them you've probably visited recently, Eileen, but when we talk about those countries, we think about not only forestry, but we think about those things like sweet potatoes, and they're being pushed heavily into the European market now. And it causes, from what I can hear from some of the farming community, there's different kinds of regulations about how you package something depending on where it's going, even to swine and poultry. I was enlightened a while back in a discussion about poultry, and that one of the big markets for China was chicken feed. And I'm thinking, we used to throw those things away a long time ago. But that's a huge market. What do we miss by not knowing more about that kind of thing?
So to be able to compete in a world market like that, you definitely have to adapt to other cultures. And being able to adapt quickly to that will allow us to capture that market better.
Is there a way that we could connect, since we do have 2 ports right here in North Carolina, Moorhead and of course Wilmington, although they're not deep ports, is there a way we can adapt better into connecting with their ports? Does the public need to support efforts to make the ports deeper? Is the connectivity with roads, transportation to and from? What do you hear from people that grow things that we try to ship out? Do they have any agendas that they need to be expressed? If, for example, if you had 10 farmers in your mind, what do you think they would want the public to know today?
About working with the ports.
About anything related to ag. And you know me, I've talked to a lot of farmers, and I know they're pretty blunt and straightforward, so you can put a little icing on if you want to, but I mean, I've had some of them just come to me and say, why don't you get so-and-so on, and just tell people A, B, C, or D.
Yeah. For me, I just think that the biggest thing is for people to understand that they're just as passionate about food safety, about environmental safety, and about protecting our natural resources as anyone. I saw there was a bumper sticker not too long ago that said, farmers, the first environmentalists. And that's exactly what they are. They want to preserve the land. They want to protect the land because the land is what, in fact, they use, to give back, to be able to grow those crops and to raise livestock. And so they want to care for it. And they realize the importance of taking care of our land, our water resources, our air resources, of our environment.
Hunter, you talk to a lot of field crop people. When you say field crop, some field crops are huge. We're thousands of acres. I mean, particularly if you talk about peanuts and various other things. Bladen County, a lot of peanuts down there, grown a lot of peanuts in Sampson County. When you see those kinds of crops and the associations that go with it, there's a National Peanut Association. There's all kinds of groups that are there to step up to try to push forward the agenda. What are we missing, and are we missing something in moving the message forward? As Eileen's commentary that she just made, I mean, that's would be a great commercial. We could just get that contained and put it out there. But what are we missing to get folks to realize, look, this is not just a couple of rows in the garden. This is a big deal, and it's feeding a lot of people. And when you go to the grocery store, it makes a huge difference because you do live in this bread basket.
Right. I would say the number one thing, as she mentioned before, is to just prevent people from taking things at face value in agriculture and to dig in a little deeper before they draw their opinions and use facts before they make those opinions. And they also need to realize that all farmers, every farmer I've ever met thus far, they take their crops very seriously, whether it be livestock or field crops. That is a representation of them. And they're going to be very proud of that, and they're going to do what they can to make sure it's high quality and safe for anybody to consume.
In this area of the state, particularly east of 95, there seems to be farmland that suits just about any particular need. One of those things that's being pushed now has nothing to do with roots or growing anything. It has to do with solar energy. And we're seeing huge fields taken up by solar energy. We had a brief discussion about this the last time Steve Froscher was on, and he was not real big on solar panels taking up the fields. Do you see that as something it's a moving trend forward? There's folks in the Congress, the United States Congress, that is saying we want no fossil fuels within 5 to 10 years. What do you hear from farmers when they hear that kind of thing? And these are people that's in the House of Representatives in D.C. that's saying that. Probably know some of the people we're talking about, but are we beyond getting folks to understand that this is just not realistic?
I haven't had that discussion with any growers thus far in the county. I would definitely say that the majority of them realize that getting rid of fossil fuels within 5 to 10 years is not going to be able to happen, especially in a farm setting with large machinery that is needed to run the business. I haven't really heard many mention about anything about solar farms yet. So
those kinds of things, when we network together, technology, expectation on the side of research as it relates to energy, when we put people in and own equipment today that you've almost got to have a degree in computer science to operate, has farming reached the point that it's just gone over the horizon of what it was 20 or 30 years ago? Is there any comparison at all other than it's dirt in the field and there's a plant in it?
There's definitely still a lot of components that are very similar to agriculture that would never be changed completely. The technology is more or less to help the farmers be more efficient, and it helps increase their bottom line, and it helps them in the field. Maybe it makes things easier on them, more convenient, but the general idea of it is still going to remain the same.
So the fundamental structure's there, but the way the outcomes are reached may be different. And I think about, oftentimes when I see something happening in the field, one of the big things that I've seen over the past few years is, used to you had to, what we called breaking the land. You had something called bottom plows, and now it's like that's something you don't see anymore. They just go right. The plants that was there is gone, and it's usually spray or something that takes care of that, and they plant right on that soil. Right. That's always I've always stood there and kind of scratched my head. How can they do that?
The process you're describing is considered no-till or minimal till.
No-till. Yeah.
So, and that is another thing for farmers being conservationists. We've looked at that, and that helps protect the soil and keep it in place, and prevents water erosion and leaching of nutrients and things like that. So that's just another way for farmers to be more efficient
and cut down
protect the land.
Yeah, and cut down on a lot of the additional fertilizers that your researchers are saying you need in that field. So we got about a couple of minutes here before we have to close. I'm going to give each one of you say 20, 30 seconds just for a wrap or something that you want to talk about. I know that you mentioned August 15 is field day, Hunter, so I'll start with you.
Yes, sir. On August 15th, we're having a field day. It's in Newton Grove, and we'll be looking at variety trials in both corn and soybeans. It's going to be until 1 o'clock that day. It's going to start at 9 to 1, and it should be a pretty big event. We're looking forward to it.
How many? Where in Newton Grove is it located?
So it'll be right outside of Newton Grove, down 55. If you're heading towards Dunn, probably 3 to 4 miles outside of Newton Grove.
Okay, and it'll be signage there if somebody just wants to stop by, and it's open to the public.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that is August 15, 9 to 1, Newton Grove, 55 Highway toward Dunn. Okay, Eileen?
And we have information at our office if
592-7161.
You got it. You know our number by heart.
Yeah, I remember. Hey, I'm just telling you. I'm a big ag guy.
That's right.
So what else is happening? What do you want to close with?
So just want to say I'm just so excited that Hunter's here with us. He's eager to get out in the community and meet farmers that he hasn't met yet. And so I just would encourage anyone to reach out to him, invite him out. And then if you've got any questions, some of the things we talked about today, if there's viewers out there that don't know things, call us and ask.
Absolutely. Good to have both of you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for being with us today, ladies and gentlemen. We look forward to seeing you again next week on Tuesday. And as always, we tell you at each show, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.